Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Discovery Debrief, a podcast that dives headfirst into the proverbial deep end of our favorite spacefaring franchise on the road to Season 2 of its latest entry, Star Trek Discovery. I'm co-host Chris Clow, and I'm joined by members of our bold panel of Star Trek franchise explorers, including Rachael Clow.
Hi.
You okay there?
You keep talking to me while I'm yawning.
Why are you yawning?
I can't stop.
And Cicero Holmes.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Oh, man. Well, it's actually been...
Or should I have yawned?
I mean, hey, that seems to be the trend. So, hashtag...
It's just me.
Hashtag Rachael
I'm
was
tired.
right. Oh, it's good to talk to you guys. It's actually been a while since we all got together to record.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Zaki couldn't join us this week, so we thought that we would take a break from the Debrief's favorite episode series just to talk solely about the abundance of franchise news that came out of San Diego Comic-Con, news from the very beginning of Star Trek Las Vegas, which is happening right now, and of course the actual footage we got to see from Season 2. But first, as always, how have you guys been doing and engaging with Star Trek since we last got together? Cicero, kick us off.
So I finished the latest book. Actually, man, it seems like it was so long ago that I have to read it again. It was really good. Drastic Measures.
Yes.
A really, really great book. It definitely... Oh man, it would be really interesting to sit and speak with the author about Saru as a character and how he was portrayed during the course of that book.
Oh, you mean Fear Itself, of course.
Oh yeah, Fear Itself,
yes.
not Drastic Measures. Sorry, Fear Itself.
Sorry.
Yes, yeah. Fear Itself. So yeah, it's been so long, so I forgot the title. Yeah, but it'd be great to sit down and speak with the author to talk about Saru as a character. I was kind of lukewarm about the book, but as I finished it, man, it really ratcheted it up, and I love the story that it told. So yeah, that was awesome.
Great. Well, if you're interested in talking to Mr. James Swallow, I might be able to make that happen. I'm working on it.
I like the cut of your jib, Chris.
Well, I mean, obviously we've got a bunch of stuff to do between now and when we actually do get around to reviewing the book itself. But it is coming up. All three of us have read the book. I don't think Zaki was able to read this one, but we are planning on getting together to talk strictly about the book, the implications on the canon, the what it means for Saru himself, and that should be a conversation that all of us should have a lot of fun with, I would think. Yeah. So glad to hear that you finished that. Rachael, in the last month, what do you think you've been up to with Star Trek?
I don't think I've had a very Star Trek-less month.
It's
very sad.
Why?
I don't know. I mean, I've been watching Dr. Quinn, and like 90% of the people on that show have been in Star Trek also. So
it is true.
That is true.
Yeah, that 90s TV crossover, I guess. Yeah. But it's a pretty good show. I've been watching episodes of it with you, but it is what it is. But well, as for me, it's mostly just been I had to catch up with getting episodes of this show out to you guys. We actually just on the day we're recording this, we just released episodes 25 and 25.1. So hopefully you guys have listened to that and enjoyed them both. Especially, I mean, it was great getting to talk about Tapestry. It's a great episode. And I found an opportunity to bring out a discussion that I'd had with a podcasting friend of mine for 25.1. So hopefully you guys dug that as well. Other than that, I've been looking at getting back into Star Trek Online. I'm just not quite sure where to do it because I've played it on PC. I've dabbled with it on Xbox, and I have it installed on my PS4. And I'm just kind of thinking, okay, well, if I want to jump back in, where do I do it? Because the Deep Space Nine expansion Victory is Life just came out for consoles, and my consoles can run it far better than my laptop can. So that's probably one of those consoles is probably where I'm going to jump back into it. And we'll actually talk about something having to do with Star Trek Online here in a little bit. But other than that, it's mostly just been going nuts over the last month over all the stuff that we've learned concerning season 2 of Discovery.
Right.
The wait just became very painful because we're about, give or take, like right about 5 months away from the premiere of season 2. A lot of stuff can happen in 5 months, of course. But we do have a fair amount of news items to get to before we actually dive into what we've seen from the forthcoming season of Discovery. So let's do a little bit of a news roundup. So let's actually tackle the most recent piece of news first. On the day that we're recording this, August 1st, the official Star Trek convention in Las Vegas has begun. Not sure if any attendees are listening to Discovery Debrief, but if you are, let us know, because hopefully we can at least be there in spirit. But anyways, one of the nice surprises to arise from the early days of the con was the fact that we have 3 new Star Trek novels to look forward to in 2019. One's going to be based on TOS, written by Greg Cox. One is going to be based on The Next Generation, written by friend of the show and former guest Dayton Ward. And a brand new Discovery novel written by author Una McCormick is going to be focusing on the story of none other than Sylvia Tilly. It's due out in January, which sounds pretty exciting. And, you know, we shared in our chat a little bit earlier today some of the preliminary information about the book and what it's going to entail when it comes to telling us Tilly's story. Rachel, what do you think of that?
I'm really looking forward to it. I want to hear the origin story of her allergies that caused her to have to be by herself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks...
I think they've done a pretty good job so far with the Discovery tie-in novels, so I have a lot of faith in whoever's sort of picking people to write them. They're doing a good job.
Yeah, you seems like you've enjoyed all 3 of them quite a bit.
Yeah.
Would you call them highlights of the last year of reading?
I don't know. I read a lot of good books, Chris.
It's true. That's why I'm asking.
I will have to get back to you.
Okay. Fair enough.
Wow.
I mean, good books, maybe not highlights. That tells you the caliber of stuff that she...
In general, I like all of the books I read a lot better than almost any of the media I consume because it takes so much effort to read a book that if it's not good, you don't finish it.
That's true.
You don't continue it. Right.
That's a good approach. Cicero, the 4th Discovery tie-in novel. It seems like just yesterday when we started reading these. What do you think of how this one sounds on concept?
So I am most curious about this one. This is the one that I'm most nervous for.
Really?
And I think it's the most difficult to get right, at least in my head. And the reason is because when we meet Tilly on the Discovery, she's a cadet. She's a newbie. There is so little in terms of time before we knew her to explore that, like, how can you make a book? You know, how can you fill 300 pages with something that's interesting to say about this character?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the things that probably dictated that a book about her come out is just how popular she became in that first season. Well, then it's just serendipity, I guess, because they had to have known when they were conceiving of Cadet Tilly, now Ensign Tilly, that she was going to be one of the more, I guess, identifiable characters that we would encounter. And the performer that they got absolutely helped to embody that. But either way, I mean, that all that notwithstanding, she was still one of my favorite characters on the first season because of the humor that she brought to it and the point of identification of actually putting someone with foibles and flaws into this insane situation. And if we can see the origins of the way that she attacks a problem and maybe the beginnings of her aspirations for command. I'll be very interested to see it in this book.
Mm-hmm.
But next, as I alluded to before, Discovery is coming to Star Trek Online. Tilly will be appearing in a new expansion called Age of Discovery, and she will be voiced by Mary Wiseman.
Okay.
According to Trek Movie, According to Trek Movie, players will be able to create a Federation captain from the Discovery time frame and, quote, join forces with Starfleet Academy cadet Sylvia Tilly, voiced by Mary Wiseman. Age of Discovery's first installment will also introduce a new Discovery-era tutorial, 2 episodes, new reputation tiers, a new queue, now referred to as a task force operation, which is sort of like I don't know if it's quite like a raid, but it's probably a PvE task that you have to take on with other human players, and several other new features. And the story element will also be taking place during season 1 of the show, right after the battle at the Binary Stars. So conceivably, it takes place well before Michael finds herself aboard the Starship Discovery. So Cicero, as the senior gamer here, and someone who has infinitely more credibility in the world of gaming than I do you have any interest in jumping into this game, or did you before? Does Discovery maybe make it more enticing by sweetening the pot a little bit?
So yes, I've jumped into STO a little bit. It is definitely a fun game, especially for Star Trek fans, and I've been really impressed with the tale that it's had over the course of the years, and they've allowed themselves to lean into the franchises a lot more. It'll be interesting to see how Discovery is embraced by the STO RPG audience, because I wonder. It's been interesting. It's been really an interesting year. Coming off the hills now that we're half removed. We're at the halfway point between when we last saw Discovery and when we'll next see Discovery. And I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of Star Trek, true Trekkers.
Sure.
And the conversations surrounding Discovery have been very, very mixed. The Venn diagram of Discovery fans that are also Star Trek fans is not quite as large as you would think. It is mostly still a circle, but there are definitely people on the outside that wholly reject, as we talked about it while it was still in the zeitgeist, that kind of wholly reject the show, just based off of how it interprets pre-TOS Federation, and just it'll be really something to see Discovery crew members and Discovery accoutrement amongst the TOS stuff along with the TNG stuff, because it will still look the newest, even if it's the most antiquated.
Yeah, that's true. Especially even compared with like the Kelvin stuff.
Right.
Discovery still seems like it has a newer, sleeker kind of aesthetic to it.
Right.
It's funny that you bring that up too, because I was actually recently a guest on another Star Trek podcast. It was a TOS podcast called Standard Orbit on the Trek FM network.
Nice.
And the host, Zach Moore, invited me on because we both have an affinity for both Star Trek and for Batman. And we talked about the crossover talent between Star Trek, the original series, and Batman, the animated series, arguably one of the absolutely best representations of Batman in anything ever.
Right.
And we did talk a little bit about Discovery before our discussion began in earnest. And he seemed like he was sort of in a similar boat. Like he had trouble accepting some of the changes that Discovery seemed to make to the canon. Unlike a lot of other Star Trek fans I know that have dismissed Discovery, he actually did watch the whole season. And the thing that just kind of jumps back at me, because I've told you guys before, I've said ad nauseum on this show, TOS is my favorite of the shows. It's not the best one, but it's my favorite one. It established the spirit of what Star Trek is. And I may have been a little bit nervous about Discovery in the beginning, but that nervousness completely vanished by the end. By the end, it very much established itself as, at least to me, as a legitimate entry in the Star Trek canon. And I think it's sort of, now that there's some distance between it, and I don't know what you guys think about this, but it seems like that's sort of represented or made definitive by the speech that Saru gave while they were still in the mirror universe, because we'd heard over the course of the whole season, that he senses the coming of death, and then they turned that into an inspirational speech.
Right.
And it felt perfectly in line with Star Trek to me. But yeah, you make a good point though about how, Star Trek Online as a game, it represents every aspect of the canon that we've seen at some degree or another. And Discovery taking its place alongside everything else further legitimizes it, at least in my estimation. But we'll have to see how it takes, I suppose, with people.
You gotta make that Latinum, Chris.
Well, yeah, that's true. It's a free-to-play game, though. But
yeah, okay. That's how they get you every time. Free to play,
fair enough.
Free to download.
Well, hey, to be fair though, I played it when you needed to pay a subscription fee.
Oh, good.
Right. Well, there you go.
So, yeah. This was before we even moved to Illinois. Don't worry about it. Anyway,
welcome to Rachel and Chris.
We've got to air our marital dirty laundry for the debrief listeners to hear, because I'm sure that's what they love about this show. But anyway, so we got a ton of news concerning Discovery Season 2. And since it's been about a month since we all convened and talked about the franchise, the quote-unquote latest episode of our show was pretty outdated by the time it was released. So let's run through some of the bigger things that we got out of San Diego that came from the All-Acce presentation, from the press conference that also took place outside of All-Acce, and through some interviews that cast members conducted with Trek Movie and Trek Core. So, first up, Anthony Rapp told Trek Movie that Season 2 will feature quieter moments than the first, nice, allowing us to focus a little more on the characters in between the bigger moments. Sounds pretty good. Mary Wiseman also told the same site that Tilly will have more of a fully fledged position on Discovery's bridge, which we kind of saw in the finale. And especially now that she's a fully commissioned ensign, and her bond with Stamets will be further solidified as they continue to work closely together into the second season. Other things that we'll be seeing in Season 2 include Saru's history, his family, and the Kelpian homeworld. More solid connections to canon, especially concerning Michael's relationship with Spock. L'Rell struggling against Klingon patriarchy in her new claimed position of leadership as Chancellor of the Empire. Tilly struggling with her command aspirations because I think Mary Wiseman said in one of those interviews that she's human and makes mistakes, which kind of bungles some of the things that she wants to get done as a member now of the bridge crew of Discovery. And Captain Pike has been confirmed to appear in all 13 episodes of the season. So we will not be Pikeless at all in Season 2, which sounds awesome. And Alex Kurtzman was also asked about Prime Lorca, to which he replied with an emphatic, I think that's a direct quote.
That means yes.
I don't know. Hashtag maybe Cicero's right.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm going to be crossing my fingers. That's for sure.
Crossing your fingers
also,
for Prime Lorca, huh?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I really haven't uncrossed them since we saw him die in the Mirror Universe.
Sure.
So, And also, much to Zaki's joy, I'm sure, the writers and the cast members confirmed that the show will not be returning to the Mirror Universe. And also, Anthony Rapp said there will be some fun stuff with red shirts this year.
Oh, nice.
Star Trek fun and red shirts, those are not phrases that usually go together in any meaningful capacity. But just off the top of your guys' heads, what about that rundown gets you excited? Cicero?
Well, I mean, is just more information about the show. As you were talking about that stuff, it made me realize that I do miss the show. And I'm super, super excited for what's going to happen next. And 13 episodes of Pike look pretty good. I wonder about what they're going to do, how they're going to make this whole Pike thing work. They already talked about it, or at least alluded to it during the trailer.
Yes,
but Anson Mount looked great as Captain Pike. He really looked the part. So, I mean, man, I'm super interested into it. And the other thing is, Anthony Rapp's talking about quieter moments. I really would love to see that, because not only was season 1 full of great stories that took you in different places and really ignited some really fun discussions, but one underlying tone that remained consistent were the performances of the actors.
Yes, absolutely.
They were fully engaged, and if they're given more stuff to do, and they're relying less on the special effects and relying on, so much on the fact that they're in space, that will be interesting because they've got people with the chops to make things work. So I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Rachel, any of that stuff tickle your fancy?
Yeah, a lot of it does. I think like all of this stuff kind of combined with the trailers really giving me like a vibe for the season.
Do tell.
And the vibe is like a little lighter, a little less like Lorca-y. A little bit more deeper into the side characters, less focused since we know our main characters now.
Less Zack Snyder, more Richard Donner, maybe.
Maybe. I guess that's how you would put it.
To turn a phrase from DC. Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to it. I don't know. Usually Star Trek series just get better over time.
It's true.
From their first season.
It's
so I am optimistic that this is going to happen for this show too.
Yeah. Yep. Same here. I'm particularly interested in what they're going to do with Saru. I'm really looking forward to seeing the Kelpian homeworld, especially considering what we know about Kelpians themselves and what the makeup of the society is. I think that would be kind of fascinating. And of course, I'm always going to be interested in the political intrigue that surrounds the Klingon Empire, especially considering that previous aspects of 23rd century Star Trek seem to indicate that women were not allowed to serve as the chancellors of the Empire or in the hierarchy of the command of the Empire. Maybe L'Rell is the reason for that. I don't know, but it sounds like it might be pretty interesting in that she's got some forces to struggle against, which sounds fascinating to me, especially now that we know that Tyler is along with her.
Right.
And what could that mean for him? Especially having returned to the Empire, but not looking anything like a Klingon. That should be pretty fascinating too. Something else that I thought was pretty fascinating concerns the characterization of Captain Christopher Pike as played by Anson Mount. Apparently, he will not be the beaten and exhausted man that we saw in The Cage, the original TOS pilot that takes place about 3 years before Discovery and the Enterprise rendezvous. There's a quote from Anson Mount here that I really, really gravitated toward, and he said, quote, "What I love about Pike, and I think this is kind of comes from what I took from Jeffrey Hunter's performance and to some degree the Pike that we did in the movies, is that he's a man who's very kind, who has tremendous authority, and yet can still apologize when he's wrong. And so in many ways, he's the opposite of Lorca." That, to me, kind of encapsulates exactly what you just said, Rachel, is that we had the Lorca season where the crew was petrified of their commander. The Pike season seems like it's going to be very, very different. I mean, even, and we'll talk about it when we get more into the trailer, but the dynamic of the bridge crew seems entirely refreshed. I mean, we started to see that drift that way. And Cicero, I think you even pointed it out when we were actually watching the episodes of the first season while Saru was in command of Discovery.
Right.
But without that dictatorial presence and a welcoming of collaboration, it sounds like Captain Pike is going to take that further.
Yeah. I don't know if we're breaching into the trailer stuff yet, but I do think that as spoiler alert for the trailer that you've already seen and that we're about to talk about in 10 minutes. But Pike says that he is taking command of the Discovery. Now we know for the entire season, or at least that he'll be involved during the entire season. And at points in the trailer, we actually see him in Discovery uniform. I think that while he is back on his own ship, we will see more of Captain Saru, and or in air quotes Captain Saru, and hopefully by the end of the season, the Federation says, all right, enough's enough. We're not going to go to we're not going to go to Vulcan and pick up your next captain. Your next captain has been with you all along. And it's been inside of you, Saru, all along. So hopefully we'll get to see Captain Saru, because he definitely deserves, at least based on last season, he deserves to sit in that chair.
Is some of your conclusion in that respect derived at all from the book, do you think?
No. I mean, it was a conclusion that I had come to well before I knew the book was even going to exist. And in fact, Fear itself makes me question some of everything that I knew about Saru. I think it almost acts in conflict with the growth of Saru as a character over the course of Discovery versus the growth of Saru as a character during Fear itself. Instead of it, and not to really go into a bunch of book reviews, but instead of it being like if it was a graph, and we're graphing Saru's confidence, instead of it being a natural slope up from Fear itself through season 1 of Discovery, I think it would be more of a like roller coaster, like a hill. So it it went up, and then I think it plummeted again before it took its meteoric rise. It plummeted again at the beginning of Discovery before it took its meteoric rise at the end of it. And I'd like to see it continue during season 2 of Discovery, to the point where at the end of this graph in my head that I'm visualizing is Saru sitting in the captain's chair.
Excellent. Well, we'll have to put a pin in that and see what things are like on the other side of season 2. One thing I want to ask both of you, though, Captain Pike, as we know all too well, even through episodes of Discovery, is one of the most legendary captains in the history of the Federation Starfleet. Do you think that having that sort of prototypical decorated Starfleet captain takes anything away from the uniqueness of the concept of Discovery? Because it seems like one of the things that defined the first season was this rather darker perspective coming from Captain Lorca, and how it sort of showed a far different shade in the command structure of a starship than we've seen before. Are you more relieved at the fact that Captain Pike is going to be taking command of the ship, or are you worried that maybe it's going to lose something that made the show so easy to connect with in the first season? Rachel?
Yeah, I'm not worried about losing anything. Like, Captain Pike is, referred to as legendary or whatever, but you really haven't seen him that much.
That's true.
And what I really like about what I've seen is that, like, Anson Mount looks like halfway between Jeffrey Hunter and the guy who played him in
Bruce Greenwood.
Yeah. So he's like really got like both of their kind of aesthetics in one person, which I really, didn't get just by seeing like a headshot of him. And so I think that's really cool. And I don't think that what makes any Star Trek unique is, it's captain, it's everybody, right?
Sure.
So and like Lorca took up so much of the first season, just his sort of arc, if you can call it that. I don't think he really went on a character arc, but
not in the traditional sense. No,
we as fans went on a character arc for him.
Our arc of him. That I think that having maybe a captain that is not so much of a black hole of speculation and weirdness lets everybody shine better. And it'll make it more of an ensemble piece, and that it'll be much better.
Okay. Cicero, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I first off, hashtag Rachel is right. But the second part of that is I think that Star Trek is Discovery has had an identity problem, and I kind of alluded to it before when we were talking about Star Trek Online, and this point where it feels like the show has not been embraced, or is having the most difficulty breaking through the hard resolve of the most ardent Star Trek fans. And I think adding Captain Pike to Discovery as this swashbuckling, kind of precursor to TOS Kirk really does has a great opportunity to bridge that gap and be the ambassador to the old Trek fans by bringing them in with something that is familiar to them. And Discovery has a great opportunity, like Rachel said, to do fun things with Pike because we don't know him on screen in any prolonged way. We've got one episode of TOS, we've got one old episode of TAS, and then we've got 15 minutes of him in a Kelvin film, and that's pretty much it. But if you talk to Star Trek fans, Captain Pike is one of their guys.
Yeah.
And so bringing one of their guys onto the show that isn't really theirs is a way to bring those people in, and they can do whatever the hell they want to do with him. And as long as he feels like Pike, then this is what Pike did. And that allows you to subconsciously get into the mind of the quote unquote true Star Trek fan.
Well, and by that same token, too, I think that all of us, to varying degrees, have faith in them not like turning around and turning Pike into a meth addict or something.
Right, right.
Obviously, not specifically that.
I think it was a conscious effort on their part to not make their Pike the Pike that was still suffering from the results of the aftermath of the cage. So we've got a little more a more bubbly, a more cavalier, a more Kirkian version of a captain for this portrayal of this character who, if logic serves and if they decided to go in a darker tone, would have also made sense, but it wouldn't have done the thing that I think that I've been talking about, and Rachel has talked about, that the tone seems lighter. It seems a little bit brighter.
Right.
And even the color palettes that they've been using, at least in the trailers, seem a little bit brighter. So they really have an opportunity here, I think, to get those fans in and keep them, because the show is fantastic.
Definitely. You have something to add?
I don't think the quote unquote true Star Trek fans are gonna like Pike no matter what. They're gonna be like, this isn't my Pike. The Pike that I've been building in my mind for the last 20 years.
To the credit of Star Trek fandom, and as we talked about before when we had that Twitter explosion, Star Trek fandom in some segments is very, let's say, vociferous in their opposition to Discovery, but it doesn't get nasty. It never gets to Last Jedi levels.
Right. No, it did not.
It doesn't get anywhere near that. And I think that there are a fair amount of Star Trek fans who maybe weren't sold on the first season of Discovery, but wanted to be. And Pike might be the in for them. Maybe. Right. We'll see. I mean, we got to see red, blue, and gold shirts.
Yes.
That had to excite some people. It probably excited me way more than it should have, but nevertheless.
I really, are we allowed to talk about that stuff right now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Oh, all right. Cool.
Oh, wait, what
I just wanted to apologize to the true Star Trek fans for what I just said, because sometimes I lump all men on the internet into one, and I know you're not Star Wars fans.
Yeah, the worst among Star Wars.
Right. Yes. But yeah, so if we're allowed to talk about the uniforms, the red, gold, and green shirts, what a really smart, much like their version of the Enterprise, I really thought that the choices that they made with the uniform, with the shirts, were understated and smart, but make a lot of sense and just really make that stuff pop. So if you looked at the command tunics, so at least Pike's gold shirt, he had, it seemed like it was leather, and around the shoulders were these, they weren't shoulder blades, but they were like these ridges.
It looked like just like a recolored version of the standard uniform that we've seen.
Yes. Yeah. But the ridges themselves were wider.
Oh, were they?
Yeah. Or so the indents were the same size, but the space in between them was wider.
Okay.
So, but like the design choice was very understated in my opinion. Obviously they changed some things, but again, if a person today in 2018 was wearing clothes that were designed to be futuristic from, 1968, then, from literally 50 years ago, I would look at those clothes and say they look old.
Sure.
And if I'm watching a show today, I don't want my clothes, I don't want my outfits, I don't want my sets to look old.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody saying that about my sets, especially when my show is set in the future.
Sure. Yeah. I completely agree. I mean, it has to evolve. And I mean, that was one of the things that, well, I know that Zaki and I talked about it a little bit, was the idea of, the aesthetic has to evolve. They can't use a 50-year-old aesthetic. And Zaki came back with a very valid perspective that says, well, if you treat it like a period piece of a fictional period, but still a period piece nonetheless, then the deviations kind of screw with your mind a little bit. But we'll have to see, because there's going to be more connective tissue with TOS in season 2. Maybe some of that will spill over into the aesthetics. We just don't know right now.
Right.
The 60s clothes were like felt and wool with like rickrack on them.
Right.
Yes,
like,
that's
you
true.
can't have that now. They look great.
Yeah, I agree. If we're doing uniform nitpicking, which Star Trek fans are wont to do, the only aspect of it that I'm not crazy about is the collar, but it's forgivable. Like, it's not something that I'm just like oh, the collar, it looks so awkward. But it just is what it is. I can roll with one slight thing that may not set my world on fire just fine.
As a noted indifferent to all
to costumes.
I thought they were great.
Well, very good.
I didn't even notice the color.
No, I think they're great too, because it's a good idea to meld what we have seen with the show with what we know was one of the most visually identifiable aspects of the original series. And because of that philosophy, I think it's a great idea. But there is another big item before we get to some smaller ones, and then we'll talk about the trailer. Rebecca Romijn has been cast as number 1, the executive officer of the Enterprise under Captain Pike, as seen in the cage. Last seen in the cage, actually, as played by the First Lady of Star Trek, Majel Barrett Roddenberry. Exactly how she'll play into the season, since we know where Pike will be for most of the season, has yet to be hinted at. Kurtzman said that they'll definitely be developing her further, considering her relatively negligible screen time in the cage, which makes sense. And I saw another interview where Rebecca Romijn said that she and Captain Pike actually do have a rather direct conversation about Spock specifically. So it's pretty safe to say that we're going to be seeing more of number 1, maybe more of number 1 than we've ever seen before in the franchise, which, as someone who has been fascinated with that character for my entire life, I'm very excited for. Rachel, what do you think about
Justice for number 1. Finally. I don't really know very much about Rebecca Romijn beyond her, being blue for the X-Men movies. So it'll be interesting to see what she looks like not in an inch of makeup. And yeah, this is cool. Yeah, I'm excited. And we're gonna see more Enterprise stuff. This is, there's gonna be Enterprise crew. That's awesome.
Yeah, Zaki and I were only half right, because he and I were both rooting for maybe her becoming the new captain of Discovery. But even if we can't maybe get that, the fact that she's definitely going to show up in season 2 is really, really exciting.
I hope they don't kill her.
I don't think they're going to do that.
All right.
I hope, I'm not saying hashtag Rachel was right again on that, but we'll have to. I mean, the fact that we're just going to be getting her at all is really cool. Cicero, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I like her as an actor. I like her as an ex-wife of John Stamos. I don't know why. But yeah, like, again, as I talked about before with Pike, it's, again, this is that connective tissue between TOS and Discovery that we want to see, and they have the breadth to explore, and they have a chance now to really build on canon, because here are characters even more so than Harry Mudd, who had been around a few times in on TOS and then in the animated series. But like, here are characters that are actually part of the Federation, part of the bridge crew, part of the ship that made you fall in love with this series, that you just really didn't know much about, even though you felt like you did. And now you'll get to see them, and this will become canon.
Yes.
And that is, like, the fact that as what Zaki kind of says about Enterprise, anytime you can, mush that into the canon and make it more part of the canon, he's down for it. And I'm down for the same type of thing to happen for Discovery. So it'll be awesome. It would, depending on the portrayal of number 1 by Rebecca Romijn, it would be interesting to see her become the captain of Discovery. But then what do you call her? Captain 1?
Yeah, they haven't. We'll have to see if the show actually does give her a name, because obviously the books have given her a name over the past several decades. So we'll have to see if they actually do canonize the name. Sulu, for the record too, is something kind of similar. We always knew he was Sulu, but his first name wasn't established in canon until 1991, when he appeared in Star Trek VI, and he said Hikaru Sulu commanding on the Excelsior. So, and actually, Uhura's first name wasn't canonized either until the 2009 film.
Wow.
As Nyota. So there's a history of this kind of happening with the franchise. So if Discovery did decide to actually give number 1 a real name, then it's well within the parameters of history in the franchise, at least when it comes to TOS characters. But Yeah, very well said. I'm very much looking forward to seeing more of her, and who knows, maybe it'll lead to something bigger. But other Trek tidbits that are not Discovery related specifically that came out of San Diego that I want to touch on real quick. Nichelle Nichols was honored there with a Comic-Con Lifetime Achievement Award, which is great. Nichelle Nichols is obviously one of the most legendary performers in Star Trek history, and is very well deserved. Simon Pegg also said that the Kelvin Star Trek 4 film is actually deep in development with director S.J. Clarkson and could start shooting as soon as January. I have a hard time believing that, but I guess, since they have given a director a job, maybe that's actually going to come to pass. I'm not going to really believe it until maybe Paramount releases a press release that says that Star Trek 4 has begun shooting, but we will see.
That's 6 months from now. If they've got everything in place, all they got to do is, they don't even really have to cast it. They've got their cast. They just need to, find the villain, cast the villain, and your supporting cast.
So. Yeah, we'll have to see what they do, because I know that Star Trek Beyond actually differed quite a bit on the production side compared to the first two movies, because Beyond actually moved production to Vancouver. So I know that they had to ship the Enterprise sets up there for, all of the 30 minutes that the movie actually took advantage of them. But no, I mean, I guess technically speaking, they don't really need to ship any other sets unless they're going to be retrofitting, because the Enterprise is a totally different ship for the fourth film.
Right.
If the end of Star Trek Beyond is any indication. So hopefully that will actually happen. I'm obviously very, very much anticipating a new outing of the Kelvin crew. Love that entire cast, as I think we all do. But Simon Pegg also said that he fears that Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek film is at least 6 years away, which he thinks might mean that the current cast may be too old for it. The only thing that I really have to say to that, and obviously Mr. Pegg is a listener of Discovery Debrief, but you're part of a franchise where age doesn't really matter, man. We watched Adventures of the TOS crew from 1966 until 1991, or in the case of its captain, 94, almost 30 years after that show went off the air. Listen, you've got another 20 years, 21 years of being Scotty as far as I'm concerned. So I don't think that you have to worry about being too old. I don't think any of the cast has to worry about that. And as I alluded to in our tapestry discussion, Star Trek has actually made in the past the aging of the characters a major storytelling beat. We kind of saw that in Star Trek Beyond, where, Captain Kirk on his 30th birthday said is a year older than my dad ever got to be. And, he's struggling with his own efficacy. Right. But obviously the biggest example of that is Star Trek 2, as we talked about in the Tapestry episode. And listen, man, you don't need to worry about that. I mean, presuming that the people at Paramount and the executive board aren't stupid, they'll be making movies with you guys for decades to come, at least if there's any hope in the world. So I don't think he needs to worry about that. What do you guys think?
Reading way too much into this. What he's saying is that's not going to happen.
See, that sounds like more of a extrapolation.
It's really far in the future. I'll probably be dead by then.
That's not what he said.
I don't know.
If there's...
This is not happening.
Okay. All right. Well, we will see. Time will tell. All right, so let's move along to the primary reason that we're here. We just watched it. We refreshed our memories before we got recording. So let's talk about the San Diego Comic-Con 2018 trailer reveal for Star Trek Discovery Season 2. So the trailer opens with Michael Burnham giving a monologue about, the perils of discovery and life out in space. And she lays her eyes on a very mysterious, what seems to be at least partially humanoid being walking towards her. What do you guys make of this opening shot? Because it's got a very different kind of countenance than the rest of the trailer. It's far more ominous than what we see for the following 2 minutes. But Rachel, what are your initial thoughts on the way that opened?
Well, I thought it looked very vaginal, and to me, this represents the rebirth of the season.
Oh God!
As a new entity in a new era.
Oh really? Man,
yeah. No, I did think it looked very vaginal, but like I then realized it was a person, and I don't know. She's gonna see something.
Oh man, this is now Rachel's last episode on Discovery Debrief. She is now moving to Madison Avenue. She has become the ad exec for all things now.
Mad woman.
Yes.
All right. Well, fair enough. Cicero, how did this strike you just as a tone setter before we saw everything else?
Tonally it was mostly different. I won't say it's starkly different from the rest of the trailer. But it was, it was that weird thing. It was exactly what it was supposed to. It did exactly what it was supposed to do, which was make me pay attention and go, oh, what's going on here? And that's exactly what I said. Oh, what's going on here? Who knows what that could be? Like there's so many millions of possibilities for what that what that could have been. But like the most likely of those is Burnham's dream sequence of her seeing, like, who knows, her mom, or maybe seeing Giorgio, or it could be anything. It could be Tilly.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that struck me about it is that it's one of the more sort of mysterious things that we've seen with Discovery related materials. And it kind of ignites the ideas of, really being out in the frontier. What are they encountering? What is she encountering? Because, I mean, she's a xenobiologist. She's examined alien cultures as her life's work. And this is clearly shocking her. Right. So it definitely creates a sense of sort of ominous dread, which I wasn't expecting, especially considering the rest of the trailer doesn't get anywhere near expressing those kinds of ideas. But then we see what we were left with at the end of season 1, Discovery and the Enterprise, nose to nose, as you said, Cicero. And we get our very first look at Anson Mount as Captain Christopher Pike in a scene where he tells Saru that he is taking command of Discovery under Regulation 19, Section C. As far as I know, that is not a canonized regulation, so we don't know what it is yet. But Saru indicated that it's only under extreme threat. He didn't specify if it was the ship or the Federation at large. But what do you guys make of Captain Pike's first impression? He had kind of a playful handshake when he was moving in to see Saru, and obviously we got to see those uniforms for the first time. Cicero, what went through your head when you finally saw Captain Christopher Pike on the Star Trek Discovery?
Black, what was his name? Black Moon, Black Terribleness can actually speak. From that joke fell flat.
Oh, Black Bolt.
Yes.
Black Bolt speaks.
Yes. Black Bolt.
He has a voice.
But hey, it was cool. It was fine. I didn't think much of it outside of, my main thought was, oh, so that's how they're going to explain away the fact that they've stopped and not continue on their way to Vulcan, and the Enterprise is going to be there the entire time. So he's going to take command of both of these ships. And then my second thought was like, oh, okay, this gives Saru another opportunity to demonstrate that he's capable for command.
Well, he's definitely got a better mentor for command than he had before. I think that's pretty safe.
Did he? Or did he? That's...
Or did he? Well, I guess we'll find out, won't we, in a few months. Rachel, your first look at Anson Mount as Captain Pike. What do you think? with what you know of
he's
Captain
so
Pike.
friendly and cool.
It's a very different flavor of Captain.
Yeah, he's just cool.
Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm. You think that's what they need?
Sure. I mean, I already said that I think he's kind of like crossways between the two Pikes we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I guess I was expecting him to be more like a clone of Jeffrey Hunter, but
Sure.
he seems a little bit more warm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I just liked him right away.
Yeah, I did too. I mean, that you basically hit on the thing that struck me most immediately, because Captain Pike in the cage is not exactly a happy-go-lucky guy, as we've talked about in previous episodes of this show. I mean, he was coming off of a trauma that was severe enough that he was considering resigning his commission and leaving the Enterprise behind and just living out of a suitcase across the galaxy for the rest of his life. And it was really the events of the cage that helped to show him where his best path was. But even in the cage, he showed such reserved anger and rage, especially towards the Telosians. And seeing Captain Pike with much more of a smile on his face, I don't think that the cage played a small part in getting him there, because he was smiling more by the end of that episode when he realized exactly what the Telosians could do for Vina at the end of that show. And maybe that's one of the things that's helping to feed a little bit more of an optimism in him. But then, they went to the Bridge of Discovery and they talked about these red dots that are appearing. It looks like all over the galaxy. It looks like the galaxy, doesn't it? And he Federation doesn't know what they are. They don't understand them. Pike even asks the crew, "Is it a greeting, a declaration of malice? Let's find out." And he seems excited by the idea of finding out, which is what you want from a Starfleet captain, especially on a ship like Discovery, which is the most scientifically equipped by this point in the Federation's history. So this, guys, is apparently the hook for the season. Finding out something that is totally alien, that they know nothing about, which could be a threat, or it might not be a threat. Is this a strong enough hook? Before we get to everything else, which we know is just going to add to this, does this entice you, Cicero?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, you've got to have a reason for being. A reason for us to sit around. And who cares what the MacGuffin is, as long as the stories within the season are good. There's so many shows where you're just like, and so it could be literally anything. And as long as the stories are good, people will come back. So this is better than just anything. So
sure. Rachel?
Well, I imagine we'll learn more about these red dots and why they are so interesting and unusual.
They're calling to Spock.
I suppose they are.
Well, I mean, the implication seems to be that it could be a new form of life that Starfleet is going to be able to establish some kind of contact with, which always gets captains excited. At least any captain worth their salt. Lorca probably wouldn't give a crap, but
like, I have to kill it.
Yeah, he would just go and shoot at it and see what happened and ask questions later. But Pike actually seems legitimately excited by the sense of possibility. But again, though, this is something that represents enough of a threat that he is leaving the Federation flagship, or at least I think it's the Federation flagship by this point, and kind of upsetting the command structure of another ship that is probably more scientifically equipped to answer the questions that need to be answered. So makes sense that Discovery is going to be the tool that he wields in order to find out more about it.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
You know who they should have on their crew?
Who?
A couple of crew members that I know who are very into red dots, mysterious red dots that move around, seem to be controlled by other forces and disappear sometimes. Our cats.
She's looking at me. I'm scanning my brain for Star Trek references. Like, what could you possibly be referring to? And of course, it's a reference to our cat's infatuation with little red lasers. It's true. It's true. Just throw Theo into engineering and see what happens. Oh boy.
They gotta go after those red dots, guys.
Oh man,
they will pounce.
Well, the next bit of imagery that I thought was worth taking a look at. There's something happening in a corridor for Discovery. It's hard to tell exactly what they're looking at up in the ceiling. Something that's operating up there, but there's a whole series of machinery that's moving. But the ship very much looks, I guess, kind of alive. I don't know. What do you think is going on?
They're showing more of the ship now. I mean, I think that's really what it's about. It's allowing the ship to become more of a character within the show. What the ship could do was a plot point last time, and now that we know that they probably won't be doing that a lot, the ship itself needs to become a character. So you need to be able to see a little bit more of its guts.
That's a really good point, because what immediately comes to mind when you tell me that is in two prior shows. In Deep Space Nine, when they introduced the Defiant, it was showcased as being very different from the rest of the fleet because it was strictly a battleship. There weren't science labs on board. It was just basically built as a tank to fight the Borg. And that's what made it different. That's what made it interesting. It's what made Worf want to live there when he got to DS9, which I thought was kind of funny. But then also at the beginning of Voyager, while Voyager is actually still docked at DS9, and Tom Paris is getting a little bit of a tour from a shuttlecraft outside, they talk about how advanced the ship is, how fast the ship is, can reach, I think it said warp 9.973. It has bioneural gel packs in the computer core. And it was something that helped to establish that this ship might be able to survive being stranded 70,000 light years away in another quadrant of the galaxy. In Discovery, we know that it's for its time, it's the most advanced science vessel in Starfleet, but it also has teeth. It's just for a ship that is on the front lines of the fleet. Obviously, it was equipped to do battle during the Klingon War, but it is a science vessel first and foremost, and it has the tools, it has the technology to discover, hence its name. So right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that probably it'll show us to a greater degree exactly what it can do on the front of its namesake. Right?
Sure.
All right.
And they probably got a lot of cash from
All-Access. Yeah. Sure. From All-Access and from Netflix. Netflix is footing part of the bill.
Nice.
Dat Netflix money, right?
Bottomless pit.
That sounded super white. Anyway, so the next little bit of images that I pulled that should interest any Star Trek fan, it looks like Michael Burnham is actually going into the quarters of Spock. Right. And so this is when we see that Captain Pike is actually in a Discovery duty uniform, Command Division. But we also see Burnham going through the computer records for Spock, actually seeing one of his uniforms neatly folded, sitting on a rack there. And, she and Pike share a little bit of an aside. You and I have someone in common. And Burnham even concludes Spock is connected to these symbols and he needs help. So Spock is on leave. So hashtag Rachel was right, because as we talked about,
did I predict this?
You did predict it, because in the season finale discussion, you even said, "Oh, he's probably not even going to be there."
All right.
You said it rather cynically, but you're right. You're right. Do you still feel cynical about it?
It sounds like they worked it into the plot in a way that it's part of the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fine.
It was enough to get him to these symbols or dots or whatever you want to call them, were apparently enough to get Spock to want to seek them out.
Yeah.
So, and one of the other things that came out that I didn't touch on in the earlier news is that apparently the Spock that we will see in season 2 is in far more of a position of turmoil than we've seen before, including the original series. So it's going to be a developmental chapter, and it'll apparently answer the question of why Michael's never mentioned in the canon of the 23rd and 4th centuries. So we'll have to see what actually happens there. But Cicero, what did you think of this little allusion to Spock's larger role in this season?
Well, I mean, it's a great way to keep the money down. So because this way they don't have to go out and get Zachary Quinto for an entire season, and they don't have to pay for him.
Are you throwing money on that?
Oh yeah. Like it can't not be Zachary Quinto.
See, that was the thing. That was, I don't know if you saw, I showed Rachel, was it yesterday, I think?
Yeah.
Anson Mount tweeted out, someone had just kind of randomly tweeted him after watching the trailer, saying, well, now my wife won't stop watching this trailer because of Anson Mount's handsomeness. And right. Mount actually responded, and he said, just wait until we see the guy for Spock. And I was like, oh.
Right, it's Zachary Quinto.
Is it Quinto? Do you think it's...
Come on.
He's yanking your chain.
Is that what he's doing?
Yeah, come on. I mean, like, you don't recast this iconic character with someone who wasn't handpicked by the creator of the character.
Mm-hmm.
If he's only going to be around, because the presumption that I'm making, is that this is our Star Trek, this is our Enterprise season, and then we're done. Enterprise is going to go left, the Discovery is going to go right. They'll say, "See you later, guys. It was fun." At the end, at the end of season 2,
mm-hmm.
and season 3, God willing, of Discovery will be a whole new adventure.
Sure.
And we can wax nostalgic about that time that the Discovery hung out with Captain Pike and the Enterprise, and we all got to meet Burnham's brother,
mm-hmm.
Spock. And if that's the case, if all we've got are 2 or 3 episodes with Spock, and Zachary Quinto loves playing the character, sure, he'll sign up for 3 hours of Spock. He won't sign up for 13 hours of Spock.
Mm-hmm.
But 2-3 hours, sure, why not?
Hey guys, this is Chris breaking in from the future. Obviously, this portion of the discussion didn't end up aging very well pretty quickly, but we will address that at the end of this episode. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely inclined to agree with you about this is our shot with the Enterprise. We're never going to come back to that ship or maybe even these characters again.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing to preclude the possibility, I guess, of Pike sticking with it, because all we really know about him after the Cage is that when he got promoted to fleet captain, he was horribly injured and had to be put in a chair where he could only talk through beeps. I think Kirk might have made reference to assuming command from Pike. Mirror Kirk definitely assumed command from Pike because he assassinated Pike.
Right.
But I'll have to take a look a little bit deeper at what's actually established in the Prime timeline with the post-Cage, pre-wheelchair bound Captain Pike. I'm not really.
I think it would be a little too much to have to bring Pike in and then keep Pike in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like that takes away from establishing Discovery as its own thing.
It's a fair point.
You want to make sure that it's in the solar system with all the other things rotating around the sun of Gene Roddenberry, but you don't want those. That's too close.
Mm-hmm.
Too close if you leave Pike there. And the other point about Zachary Quinto, 100% Zachary Quinto as Spock, how crestfallen, how much of a story would it be is if we get to episode 10 and they reveal Spock and it's some other dude.
Just some guy.
It's just some guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if it's not a big name, if it's not Zachary Quinto and it's somebody we know, you're like, then why isn't it Zachary Quinto? If it's just some guy, you're like, why isn't it Zachary Quinto?
That's true.
I feel like they would reveal it to get us used to it if it wasn't
like they did with
Quinto.
Anson Mount.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. Obviously, they didn't have that kind of problem with number one.
You know what convinced me that Zachary Quinto is going to do a guest spot is the fact that he's doing In Search Of on the History Channel.
Yes.
Like,
yes, he's getting himself ready.
Yeah, no, he's just...
He is becoming the new Leonard Nimoy.
He's Leonard Nimoy. Like, he's like, you know what? No one is doing Leonard Nimoy's parts except me. That's it.
I'm sure that Nimoy would be totally fine with that.
Oh, yeah.
Probably, yeah.
But it just kind of brings up they had... Quinto's interview on the For the Love of Spock documentary is one of my favorite parts of that. I mean, as much insight as you glean from everybody else, you really got this sense of like love and reverence for not just Nimoy's foundational contributions to Star Trek, but the kind of person that Leonard Nimoy was. If you haven't seen that documentary, I think it's still on Netflix. Highly recommend it. You should definitely take a look at it. But no, I mean, you guys have actually just entirely convinced me, because especially you, Cicero, because you're right. If it is just a guy, then there's going to be inescapable disappointment.
Right.
So yeah, I'm inclined to agree. And if it's a name, well, then why didn't you spring for Quinto?
Right.
Unless he was dead set against doing it, you could totally do it with him.
His chubby Nick Ball.
He's back again.
Oh man. Very good. Very good. Well, let's move along. We just had a couple of quick action shots that I thought were interesting. So one of the screen caps, and obviously you at home can't see it, but right before Discovery warps away from the Enterprise, before the music kicks in, there's actually a worker bee that's working on one of the Enterprise's nacelles, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, did they maybe previously get too close to one of these red dots that it might have actually damaged the ship before Discovery goes off? And one of the things that I'll be interested to see in the season, and this is getting into some pretty deep weeds just when it comes to the technology of Star Trek, but I would love to see something illustrate where Discovery is more advanced than the Enterprise. Obviously, the Enterprise is like 10 years old, 11 years old by this, 12 years old by this point. And Discovery is one of the newest ships in the fleet. So it's more advanced, and we know that it's probably more advanced when it comes to its scientific endeavors. But there's got to be something else that makes Discovery the right ship for this job. And I'll be interested to see where they broach the idea of Discovery maybe being better from a technological perspective than the Enterprise. But after that, we got some pretty cool, just kind of quick fire action shots. One of which is Burnham actually leaving one of the pods, or launching in one of the pods. And it goes back to the pilot episode of Discovery, because when she goes out in the suit in that very first episode to ultimately find a Klingon waiting for her, she has this same smile on her face, because she just zooms out into space, and you get the sense that this is what she lives for. This is one of the things that she absolutely loves to do as a member of Starfleet. And we got some other quick action shots of Pike in one of these things with something having impaled the front of it, and Burnham reassuring him that Discovery has him, as Detmer looks kind of shocked about, oh yeah, we got him. It's kind of funny. That humor is breaking through a little bit more. But what did you guys get just as far as a sense of the dynamic that we've kind of been alluding to over the course of this conversation? What do you think that means for this crew that have been through the war, that have a new commanding officer that might be a little more expressive now? Cicero?
I think they're definitely coming. They're finding their voice.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting their they're finding their agency as a crew, and they were working under Lorca as an efficient crew, but but now they're allowed to be themselves under, you know, nebulous leadership, the leadership of Saru as the little brother who stuck around, and as, you know, Burnham as the big sister who left and then came back, you know, full of vigor. And now you've got Captain Pike as the long lost uncle that comes in. I've just built, like, you know, some new family, the Ponderosa for Discovery. But like, I think as you know, the ship is going to become a character. The actual characters, that the bridge crew and the crew themselves will actually become more fully realized characters for the very first time. And they're going to be able to have the space and the freedom to do that. You know, especially now that we've reestablished the world in the first season. Now we can get a little bit more insular and allow these guys to push us out as characters from the perspective of being characters.
Yeah, definitely. Rachel, how's this dynamic look to you? You said, I mean, you've been talking about how it just looks lighter overall. Is this one of the things that punctuated that for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that you had like this, what looks like a moment of like drama of, you know, like Pike spinning out of control with, you know, a moment of more lightness. I think it also shows that maybe we're going to get some more focus on the sort of ancillary characters, the Detmer and others.
Arium and communications officer, I forget his name off the top of my head, but there's a lot of people left on the bridge to explore.
Yeah, and they've had like hardly any lines.
Yeah, very true.
Right.
Well, it's time, and I think that they did allude to the idea that some of them were going to be getting a little bit more play, which is good. And then we also saw the crew, or we saw Burnham, we saw Pike, and I think that's Saru next to him in an EV suit drawing phasers. And I kind of think that that's tied to we saw Tig Notaro, who plays a chief engineer of another starship, which I need to start memorizing the name of the ship that she's a part of, but it seems like that's where they're at, if I were to guess, on her ship, because while they're talking to her, they both have their EV suits on still.
Right.
And Tig Notaro is an interesting choice. You know, I mean, her stand-up is funny. Like, she's got a very muted sort of sense of humor. She lets laughter bubble up sort of out of the awkwardness of something that she says, and I like that in general. But this seems a little bit more like, you could tell that it's her with the sense of humor, but it's more like punchliney than I think we've typically seen from her. But do you guys think that she's gonna be a good addition for Star Trek, Rachel?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think they obviously cast her for a reason, and I'm guessing that they had a character that needed to deliver some like really deadpan, humorous lines.
The techno babble from her is probably going to be really solid.
Maybe. I remember her saying she had trouble with it.
Yeah.
So, but and she's sort of, you know, one of the masters of just straight face deadpan, saying something really funny. So
yeah, very true. Cicero, how familiar are you with her? You've seen some of her stand up, right?
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar with Tig Notaro. So I've seen her topless. So so I love these types of castings, especially when you get really smart comedians to play these roles where they don't have to act, and it's not necessarily a dig against them. Where they get to play these roles where the character themselves, just the nature of the character is pretty straight and deadpan, and then they get to add their humor on top of that. And it works so well. I mean, just look at last year with Harry Mudd.
Yeah.
And I can't think of the actor's name is escaping my head
Wilson.
right now. Rainn Wilson. Like, he played it perfectly because it was cast so well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they understood that he understood how to play this character. And I think that what we got to see really quickly was that, oh yeah, I get it. This is going to be tough, but I don't have to do a lot with who I am as a character. I just kind of have to do a lot with what I say. And I know how to say things. I do that for a living.
Right.
So, so I'm super on board with that.
That actually brings up something that I forgot to mention about Discovery Season 2, because we actually are going to be able to get some Trek before the season actually starts. There's going to be a series of shorts that are released ahead of the season premiere. What do they call them? I think they actually just called them Trek shorts. And one of the characters who will be appearing in those is Harcourt Fenton Mudd. They actually said that that Rainn Wilson is going to return for these brief little looks. That I think these are some of the things that are going to be focusing on some of the more ancillary characters, and Harry Mudd's going to be a part of that. So we do have more Harcourt Fenton Mudd to look forward to.
All right,
which is good news. I think good news all around.
Yes.
So moving along in the actual trailer, one of the images that I just love, because we didn't get a lot of Stamets, we didn't even get a lot of Tilly, but we did have one pretty cool image of them together, excited about something that they worked on together, and they even give a high five. Stamets has a smile on his face, which if you had told me at the beginning of season 1 that we would see him smile at all, I wouldn't be sure about that. Obviously, we got groovy Stamets out of it, but no, it looks like that the relationship between these two might be kind of a focus.
Right. And they were celebrating math, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the power of math.
Typical of you nerds.
You're the scientist.
Yeah, I know.
You didn't like that? This is the power of math, people. In the high five.
I think everyone in Starfleet should know the power of math already.
Well, but
no, it was great. I liked it. Just yanking your chain.
All right. But then came. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Like something that we're going to see from these two, or are you just kind of excited?
Yeah, just excited.
Yeah, seems good.
Yeah, we got my favorite part in this trailer, which you see Captain Pike in the Discovery uniform talking to Michael, the Enterprise outside the window, and Pike says, "Wherever our mission takes us, we'll try to have a little fun along the way, ruffle a few feathers." And Michael just says, "I look forward to it." And that is something that legitimately got me misty-eyed. And the reason that it got me misty-eyed is because as much as I loved the first season of Discovery, it was missing that sense of mischievous fun that really good Star Trek can come with. Obviously, The Next Generation didn't really have that, owing to its commanding officer. I mean, it did in some places, but Pike's his whole countenance during that little snippet that we saw in the trailer was really infectious to me. And it seems to be very representative of the aim. Like if I thought that they put that line in there for any particular reason, my guess is because that is what's going to encompass the direction of season 2. You know, like you talked about the tone, Rachel, and how that kind of feeds into a larger sense of fun. But if anything drives it home, it's that line from Pike to me. And I just loved seeing it. What do you think, Cicero?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that it does it does kind of belie the tone potentially of the season. And again, I think it really circles back to that theme that I had early on, which was that this is going to be the season. And I think from a showrunner's perspective, this may be intentional. This is going to be the season that gets the Star Trek
faithful,
Star Trek faithful, the pig-headed, of them all on board.
Yeah.
with Discovery as a show that is legitimate Star Trek.
Let me just piggyback on that. As an embedded Star Trek fan myself, seeing that, I don't know how you couldn't get excited about the possibilities that this season represents. You know, getting back to this very TOS kind of spirit of what did Patrick, or what did Captain Picard call it to Spock's face? Cowboy diplomacy. That's what he said.
Right.
And you know, cowboy diplomacy. It seems just what the Doctor ordered right now. I just love the sense of possibility that this provides.
Yeah, and you know, I really do think that they're going to do in their own way, throw a Hail Mary, and you know, a full all out blitz. It's almost football season to the, you know, the Star Trek fan, to get them on board and not think about, you know, like there's still a little bit of conversation about Enterprise not being Star Trek, but not really. It's just faded, people. Yeah. The, you know, people just kind of say, it's not my favorite show. But like, we need Discovery to get to a point where people can say it's not my favorite it's not my favorite version of the franchise, but it's
still talked about in equal step.
But it's still right. It's still talked about in step with Star Trek. You just talk about Star Trek on TV. The other part of that is the one thing that we really haven't talked about in the trailer overall is that the quality of the effects are still the best that's ever been seen on the Star
Trek.
You know, these are movie level effects. They are phenomenal.
Easily. And we know that Jonathan Frakes is back directing at least one episode. And he's also going to be directing episodes of The Orville, which got some pretty cool reveal. This isn't an Orville podcast, of course, but look, Orville season 2 looks good too. Like if you're a fan of spacefaring fiction.
I haven't watched the trailer yet.
You totally should.
Oh.
But it's going to be a good upcoming year for spacefaring fiction, I think. But and then we got Pike's order given words. You know, with Kirk it was take us out. With Captain Picard, it was make it so. And with Pike, it's just hit it. And I thought that was awesome.
Yes.
I thought that was really cool.
Yes.
And of course, you know, final image that we were left with, the Saurian crewmate Linus sneezing on an unfortunate science officer of the Enterprise who was caught in the crossfire. I hope we see more of Linus. I like Linus already. Rachel, you like Linus?
That's a lot of makeup for a one-off. So I think we're going to get some more Linus. He seems all right. I don't know.
Seems like a good dude. I would like to see more.
If you're going to sneeze like that, you could not sneeze on your coworkers, though. I think
well, they probably they probably have some, I don't know, cleaner that's...
Maybe it's not gross and Saurian.
He didn't seem very concerned.
Yeah.
You know, didn't seem very concerned.
It's just a thing.
What do you think of the Linus sneeze, Cicero?
It was cute. And you know, and I kind of groaned at it being cute.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But like, yeah, you know, I mean, it was fine. It was exactly what they wanted it to be. I don't know if I was down with that as a thing, you know.
Well, it had a very kind of like TOS quality to it, though. You know, like if TOS had the ability to do that, then it would have. But no, I mean, I see where you're coming from. It's a little
right.
Could have had that.
Yeah, I mean, it was ham-fisted, but like, okay, you know. So when I saw that moment, I was like, oh, this is the moment for the laughs at SDCC.
Yes.
In the room.
Yes.
Right.
Sure.
Because clearly that's what it was built for.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I was fine. But and I felt like every moment before that stinger moment at the end was for me, and that last, the stinger post credit moment, if you will, was for, you know, for laughs and, you know, for the crowd that was there.
Sure.
They definitely could have had that music that they play at the end of TOS episodes when there's like a a joke on the episode.
Oh yeah.
And there's like the like light whistly like do 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 like that kind of. They should have.
Yeah, that would have been good. Well, Linus, we get to actually see a Saurian. Apparently they make really good brandy, especially if you ask evil transporter duplicate Kirk. He loves drinking that brandy. Oh boy. All right, guys. Well, that's pretty much the end of the trailer. So overall, if you had to give it a grade and relate it to your sense of anticipation for Discovery Season 2, Rachel, what about you?
I would give it 9 out of 10 cool stepdads. Your abusive, mean dad is dead, and now you have your cool stepdad.
You get a PlayStation.
It's like, hey, sport.
We're gonna have some fun along the way.
Yeah.
So good trailer.
Yeah. Definitely.
Cicero.
Yeah, I mean, I grade trailers on their ability to make me want to watch the thing that they're trailing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the action of a trailer? Is to trail?
Yes.
So it's trailing. It very much made me want to do the thing that it wanted me to do, which was watch that show.
Excellent.
When it comes out. So here's a little secret. I was going to do it anyway, but it definitely what it really accomplished was it made me feel nostalgic for watching, the process of watching the show, and it whetted my appetite for wanting to watch the show some more. So 9 out of 10. Like,
great.
I can still wait, but yes, I'm ready.
Yeah, you said you forgot how much you missed it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Totally understandable.
Good memory.
Haha. I do one or two things okay. That's about it. Rachel gives me a thumbs up. I'll take it.
All right.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm obviously very excited as well. It's going to be a painful wait. See, this is my problem. Like, we're in the middle of summer. There's still, summer ends on September 22nd here. So we're like halfway through summer effectively, even though we're into August now. But there's so much stuff that I look forward to on the other side of that I'm worried that I'm losing my summer just because I'm biding my time for the things that I'm looking forward to. Like September 7th, the PS4 Spider-Man game comes out. October 27th, Red Dead Redemption 2 comes out. December 21st, Aquaman comes out. Discovery Season 2 is coming in January. It's just like everything that I'm looking forward to isn't really in the summer anymore. So I feel like my summer is kind of disintegrating before my eyes. But after a trailer like that, man, I am so ready for Season 2 of this show to start. I mean, I've been painfully aware of how much I've missed Discovery, as I think I made clear while we were recording episodes for Season 1. But no, man, I don't ever want to go back to having no Star Trek down the pike. No pun intended.
Well,
no pun intended.
So I caught what you did there. Chris, I will say live in the moment because in a couple of weeks, the Happy Time Murders will be out in the theaters.
Oh.
Which is the movie by one of the Henson sons.
That's right.
With R-rated Muppets.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm there for that. And there are lots of other things that are going on. It has not been too hot in Chicago, so you can actually enjoy one of the best times to actually live and be a Chicagoan.
Yes.
So enjoy all of those things.
Yes, sir.
And also you can try and write a Star Trek movie screenplay that you could give to Quentin Tarantino so he could not film that one also.
There you go. That sounds like a wonderful use of my time.
Don't give it to Tarantino.
Oh, boy. Well, Yeah, we're obviously, my esteemed panelists are very confident in Quentin Tarantino's ability to turn around a Star Trek movie.
Quentin Tarantino is not the type of guy to just say stuff, Chris.
That concludes our trailer breakdown, but we also have a few more thoughts to share before we leave you. The biggest bits of news to transpire after we recorded this episode was that SIR Patrick Stewart is returning to the Star Trek franchise in an all-new CBS All Access series, where he will reprise his role of Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek The Next Generation 20 years after the events of Star Trek Nemesis, which places it right around the beginning of the 25th century. Recently, the Discovery Debrief panel actually got together in person in the Chicago area, and before we disembarked, we all shared some thoughts on what Patrick Stewart's return means for Star Trek. Zaki said,
I could not be more excited to know that Jean-Luc Picard is returning. We need him right now. He is the model of what a leader can be and should be. He is compassionate and wise and stern when necessary, but kind and willing to learn, willing to be wrong. That kind of leadership is in short supply. Captain, welcome back aboard.
Here are Cicero's thoughts.
So I am super excited for Patrick Stewart to be returning to the Star Trek universe. We're going to get to see what's beyond the Enterprise and just the furthering adventures of Jean-Luc Picard. I'm here for it, man. I am so happy for this. Yes. So and it gives it also will justify even more that CBS All Access subscription, which is I'm all for that.
Rachael added,
I'm super pumped. It's gonna be awesome, even if it's not awesome. Just seeing Jean-Luc Picard will be great. So, can you bleep that out, Chris? I'm sorry. Okay. I'm excited. Woo!
Finally, my thoughts. Anyone who takes to heart the zeitgeist of the times we live in can likely use a bit of hope. Whether you're looking at news headlines, the careful and degrading balance between privacy and security through technology, uncertainty in the global economy, or even just the state of discourse in everything from politics to fandom, hope seems to be in short supply. The return of one fictional character, beloved as he may be, is hardly a solution to the problems we face, but I feel like I know better than anyone the very real, symbolic power that the icons of popular culture can wield over our ability to perceive what's happening in the world. Yes, these characters are fictitious, but in almost every respect that counts, what they fight for is very real. There are fewer characters that are as emblematic of this idea as Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Patrick Stewart spoke of the fact that there is never any shortage of people who stop him on the street or who speak to him at conventions and relay the truest senses of hope and optimism that he helped to ignite through his portrayal of the captain of the Enterprise D&E, and it's that exact sense of hope, that ideal to strive for a better tomorrow that few other characters would be able to inspire. Much like Patrick Stewart talking to his younger self in X-Men Days of Future Past,
it's the greatest gift we have, to bear their pain without breaking. And it's born from the most human power. Hope. Please, Charles, we need you to hope again.
we could all use a little more of that through the lens of an optimistic future, and perhaps it'll be taken even further by being reintroduced to that future's absolutely best arbiter. On top of that, the debrief crew also obviously will have to address the recent casting of actor Ethan Peck as Spock in Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. So,
you can expect that when we next convene. That's a little too heavy a topic to simply push to the end of this episode. As of right now, though, that's going to do it for episode 26 of Discovery Debrief. We hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please like and follow us on our social media channels. And if you'd be so kind, we'd appreciate it if you wrote a review for the show on iTunes or Facebook. It only takes a minute, and we'll be happy to read your review on the air when it is posted. If you have any questions, feel free to find us on Twitter at DSC Debrief, where you can also find all our individual Twitter handles, and feel free to contact us through Twitter, our Facebook like page, or by sending an email to hailingfrequencies@discoverydebrief.com. Please be sure to set your courses for this feed for future episodes. As always, though, until we meet again, please, go boldly, my friends.